The Industrial Revolution created a world of miracles, steam-powered factories, iron railways, and cities that scraped the sky. But this new world was haunted. It was haunted by the millions who fueled its machines, men, women, and children who traded their lives for poverty wages in the deafening darkness of the factory floor. There was rage, there was despair, but there was no coherent voice for their suffering. Until 1848. In that year, a short, explosive pamphlet was published that would give this ghost a voice, a name, and a weapon. It began with a chilling declaration. A specter is haunting Europe, the specter of communism. This is the story of the Communist Manifesto, a document that was part prophecy, part battle cry, and the single most influential political text of the modern age. It was an attempt to hijack history itself. The industrial world had created a new kind of battlefield, not of nations, but of classes. On one side was the bourgeoisie, the factory owners, bankers, and entrepreneurs. They owned the means of production, the factories, the machines, the capital. They were the new masters of the universe. On the other side was the proletariat, the massive growing class of industrial workers. They owned nothing but their ability to work. They sold their labor, their time, their very lives just to survive. They were alienated from the products they created, trapped in a cycle of exploitation. This vast gap between the two classes was the central, brutal fact of the new industrial reality. Two men set out to explain this conflict. Karl Marx was a brilliant, radical German philosopher, a political exile living in poverty. Friedrich Engels was the son of a wealthy German factory owner, a man who saw the horrors of the system from the inside while managing his father's mill in Manchester. They were an unlikely pair, the impoverished scholar and the capitalist's son. Together they spent years in the libraries of Europe, devouring history, economics, and philosophy, trying to build a scientific theory to explain the world they saw. The manifesto was commissioned by a small group of revolutionaries called the Communist League. It was not meant to be a dense academic work. It was designed as a short, sharp, easily understood call to arms. The manifesto's central idea was electrifyingly simple and powerful. Marx and Engels declared, "The history of all hitherto existing society is the history of class struggles. Not kings, not ideas, not gods. Class struggle was the engine driving history forward. Freeman and slave, patrician and plebeian, lord and serf, and now bourgeois and proletarian." But Marx went further. He argued this final struggle was different. Capitalism, in its relentless pursuit of profit, was producing its own gravediggers. By gathering workers together in massive factories and cities, capitalism was creating a unified, self-aware proletariat. The system, Marx predicted with scientific certainty, was inherently unstable and would inevitably collapse under its own contradictions, leading to a workers' revolution. This wasn't a hope, it was a historical guarantee. And the manifesto ends with one of the most famous rallying cries ever written. The proletarians have nothing to lose but their chains. They have a world to win. Workers of all countries, unite. The manifesto was published in February 1848, on the eve of the springtime of peoples, a wave of revolutions that swept across Europe. You might think it was the fuse that lit the explosion, but you'd be wrong. The initial impact of the manifesto was almost non-existent. The 1848 revolutions were driven more by liberalism and nationalism, and they ultimately failed. The manifesto faded into obscurity, a forgotten pamphlet from a failed revolutionary moment. But the idea did not die. Over the next few decades, as industrial capitalism grew more powerful and global, the manifesto was rediscovered, translated, and embraced by a new generation of socialist parties and labor unions. It became their foundational text, their North Star. The seed had been planted. For over 60 years, communism was a theory, a ghost. Then, in 1917, in the chaos of the First World War, the ghost became flesh. Led by Vladimir Lenin, a devoted disciple of Marx, the Bolsheviks seized power in Russia. For the first time, a state was explicitly founded on the principles of the Communist Manifesto. This is the fulcrum. The Communist Manifesto did not invent poverty or inequality, but it did something far more powerful. It gave them a simple, all-encompassing explanation and a radical, violent solution. It turned history into a weapon. The communist states of the 20th century ultimately collapsed under their own weight of tyranny and economic failure. But the manifesto's power was never just in its specific predictions. Its power lies in the questions it asks. In a world of staggering wealth inequality, are the classes still at war? Is capitalism inherently exploitative? The ghost that Marx and Engels summoned in 1848 has not been vanquished. It continues to haunt our world, a perpetual challenge to the system we inhabit, a promise of liberation to some, a blueprint for tyranny to others. It remains one of the most potent ideas ever put to paper.